I wanted to start off by showing you what Mural is and how you add content, but now I want to look at some examples to maybe inspire you or give you some ideas how you might be able to use it in your own work. Let me zoom out on this mural, and you can see here we did a brainstorming session on that same topic. So this might be kind of the conclusion. If the group of us here today were to keep going, we might end up with a mural that looks something like this. You see the team up here in the upper left-hand corner. On the left, we did a brainstorming session, and this is labeled as such here in this large header. But if I zoom in, I can see some of those brainstorming ideas here. So this is kind of unstructured. Everybody's just getting their ideas out. And then we use those areas that I just showed you. I showed you that area feature here to cluster the ideas. So there were some themes that started to emerging. And if you know about affinity clustering, you can use these areas and affinity clustering to find patterns. So games and playing, fun things was a pattern that emerged over here. And then we did a vote, and here are the voting results. We copied those sticky notes that got the most votes. We can have another discussion about them down here. And if I move further down, we even put things on a small timeline. Over here on the left, I included some links. So this is kind of my reference section or further links section as well, too. There's even a PDF document in here as well, too. So if I zoom out, I can see there are 4 areas, distinct areas to this mural. Over here, the brainstorming that we did, then we moved to affinity clustering, then we voted and prioritized. And that's really, I think, the best way to think about Mural. It's not about doing one activity, but actually using the large virtual space that we give you to actually chain activities together, tie separate steps together. If you're doing design thinking, for instance, you can do personas and empathy maps and journey maps and have that all in one place. And of course, once everything is digital, it's shareable, it's archivable, it's traceable. You can go back and see who said what, when, and you have a record of your session, and it's a visual record. But because it's digital, you can loop in other teammates who may not be on location or at the same site with you, and you're working with a distributed team. So a brainstorming session, I think, is something we see a lot of customers doing, a lot of people doing brainstorming sessions in Mural. But you might also do things like design thinking activities. In this case, this is an experience mapping activity. Again, you'll see here we used the entire mural to do 4 different activities. We looked at a stakeholder map here in the upper left, then we did some personas, then we did some empathy maps. But here in the center, we have journey maps. In this case, we were looking at going to the supermarket by bicycle. And what would Jake's experience be here? So Jake is our persona, and we can look at the steps and the feelings and the pain points at each stage in his experience of going to the supermarket by bicycle. Notice here we also included the images, so we have this kind of rich, high-fidelity description of his journey from our research as well, too. And then we can even move into brainstorming right down below, based on the opportunities and pain points, what ideas can we come up with? So again, zoomed out, I can't see all of that detail, but I can see that there are 4 areas here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I can then zoom in to see the detail. If I wanted to see this empathy map, I can zoom in. So again, you'll be moving around, panning and zooming quite a bit in Mural at different levels of fidelity. At this level, I get the overview. If I zoom in a little bit more, I see the section. If I zoom in more, then I can see and work with the content. So we can tend to think about things in kind of 3 or 4 different levels of scale that you can work at. Let me show you another example. This is related but slightly different than experience mapping. This is something called user story mapping. And in this case, we started with personas down here at the bottom. So we kind of started at the bottom and worked our way up the mural. We were looking at an agile team, was looking at an app for a teacher and instructor to manage homework broadly. And we had these 2 persona. This is the teacher, the instructor, and Emma is the student. But then what we did here at the top of the mural is we looked at the journey or the interaction that the instructor would have with the application. They have to log in, then search and browse, then view the list, and all the set steps and sub-activities that he has to do. But what we were ultimately trying to do was sort our user stories. So if you know agile development for software, that breaks things down into individual stories, which is a great way to manage a project because you can see progress and you can manage the development effort a lot better. But you also lose the big picture. So what user story mapping does is it tries to give you the big picture and look at stories, the functionality that you're developing in terms of the user journey, which is here at the top. And from this, you can then derive epics and have conversations around releases and things like that as well, too. So user story mapping, great to do with a remote team. We have a little case study on our blog where we did that with one of our customers, a team that was distributed between Europe and the US, and we were able to effectively collaborate visually in a user story mapping exercise. One more quick example, we've also worked with things like Lean, and in this case Lean UX. We partnered with Jeff Godhealth to do some Lean UX activities. We were looking at coming up with hypotheses in this particular example, and we did this exercise with a completely remote team. So the team was literally scattered around the world. And we were still able to move from, what are the business outcomes, the metrics that we want to change, to the persona, to the user outcomes, and then to the features. So we actually worked back from the outcomes to the features. And then we wanted to come up with experiments. The first part of coming up with experiments in Lean is to come up with a hypothesis statement to be able to then validate your assumptions. So we created these hypothesis statements. And again, we did this collectively as a team on a conference call, but used Mural as the platform, as the background, as the whiteboard to do all of the visual collaboration. So there are lots of different ideas and use cases that you can imagine to use Mural for. We typically see people doing things like design thinking, innovation, creative work, design work as well too. You can think about putting mock-ups here in Mural. We've very often seen people put screenshots of an existing application or of a new application, line them up in Mural so that you can see them all back to back. Effectively, anything that you might do on a flip chart or a whiteboard in the office, you can think about doing in Mural and more, because you can add video and links and images as well. You can think about extending the whiteboard not only into your browser but into the digital space.